Welcome to another episode of Things You Didn't Know About the Holocaust. Now, I'm Phyllis Dimblin Miller, and I have a very special guest today. Perhaps you will remember her, Panina Zilberman, from a previous interview. She's the CEO and founder of the Tarbert Foundation, which really deals with Romania, et cetera, et cetera. But today, April 15th, 2025, is her mother's Liberation Day from Bergen-Belsen. And uh, 8 years ago. She is going to first tell us about what she considers, what as the forgotten camp, Transnistria. So please go ahead.
Hello. Hi, Phyllis. Thank you very much. Chag Sameach for
Thanks.
Passover. It's really a special day. And I'm going to speak about Transnistria, which was a camp. And it's so much what to talk about. And I'm not going to be able to tell you all about. But my major aim is to start the curiosity, the interest, and the rest, I hope you and your listeners will follow up. Now, when I was about 10, my grandmother, the mother of my father, who was from Bucharest, a very cultural and special woman, she is actually the one who told me the story of my mother's deportation from Siget to Auschwitz. And when she finished, she paused and then she said to me, and there was Transnistria. And I was only 10 years old. So that was the first time I heard this word. And it's a very long word, and Transnistria sounds very mysterious, actually. Years have passed. I became the director of the Holocaust Museum in Toronto. And I usually used to stay after hours when it was really quiet and you can accomplish something. The phone rang. I pick it up. I said hello, and a very upset woman was on the other side screaming in my ear, "Have you ever heard about Transnistria?" And I calmly said, "Yes, I did." And that was around 1995. She was a survivor of Transnistria in Toronto. And she felt she was very much involved in Holocaust studies. And she felt that in North America, when she says where she survived, unfortunately, people don't know what she speaks about. There was a time till about the year 2000, a little bit after, that most of the North Americans knew one word, Auschwitz. Um, and I am here going to say something in brackets. I never let anyone compare camps nor survivors' experiences. For example, Transnistria didn't have crematoriums as Auschwitz did, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't horrible, awful, that people were not killed or died, and so on. So we will not compare anything. So let me take a little bit some history here
Please.
with the what happened and why did Romania come into it. But before that, I have one more remark to make. The history of Romania is that starting after liberation of World War II, it became a communist country until the revolution in December 1989. So after that, the new government came in. Basically, there was the same personnel, just that they changed their thoughts and views, let's say. And their first and most important wish in the new government was they wanted to be part of the EU. Because being part of the EU, you do have privileges, and your citizens have rights um, to is various grants and so on. However, in the application, there is a line that says, have you had a Holocaust in your country? And they kept leaving it open because the Romanian government, definitely under the communist regime, was nobody speaking about the Holocaust. You see, the Jews who remained in Romania after 1945 had double Holocausts because they suffered before and then they couldn't express themselves during the communist period. So now the new government still denies, still says no. However, in the year 2000, want to be exact, in the year 2003, at the time, the president, his name was Ion Iliescu, appointed the Wiesel Commission, which was an international commission that has been led by the Nobel Prize, Peace Nobel Prize winner that we are so proud here in Siget, Professor Elie Wiesel, may he rest in peace, and the well-known Romanian historian Jean Anschel, who also left this world, together with Professor Radu Ionid. At the time, he was chief Eastern European archivist at the Washington, D.C. Holocaust Museum, and as it happens presently, he is the ambassador of Romania to Israel. So these three very famous historians took upon themselves, with the blessing of the president of Romania, to put together a report about the Romanian Holocaust. The report came out in 2004. It's a very heavy, over 1,000 pages. And the document stated, and this is the key, that between 280,000 to 380,000 Jews were murdered or died under the Romanian civilian and military authorities. That is also very important to note, that it's not under, it was under the Germans, but the ones who really killed, unfortunately, were the locals. What has emerged out of that report is, number one, the same president authorized to have a special Holocaust Memorial Day in Romania. The way we have 27 as the international, and then each country has its own. So Romania has it on October the 9th. Now, one will ask, why October the 9th? Because the deportations from Bukovina region started in October 8, 9, around there. And really,
what year?
In 1941, thank you. And since then, it is observed by the parliament, by the army, by all the officials. It's a real day where the Embassy of Israel is involved, the Jewish federations. If I'm in Romania, I also hold an event in schools at the monument in Siget. So it is very well established as a special observance day. So this is what happened as a result. Now, I want to take you to understand a little bit of what was happening historically in Romania. In the 30s, which in a way, when you are asking a Romanian non-Jew, um, how was life in the 30s? Oh, it was the best. They call it interbellic years because it was between the First World War and the what came after. However, for us, the Jews, that was the worst time, the 30s. Anti-Semitism started to rise as it raised various situations in Germany, in Austria, and so on. Slowly it came to the east. And so life was not as easy as possible for us. And there were different regulations against us. I'll give you an example. In the city Yash, which is a very beautiful city in the north, borders with Ukraine today, former Soviet Union on the other side, Moldova. There was a quota. How many doctors, how many pharmacists, how many lawyers, but lots of accountants. You could be an accountant if you wanted, but you couldn't do the other studies. So
Wait,
this
we need to clarify. If you were
sure.
a Jew.
Yes, it was only these regulations, these stipulations were only against the Jews. Yeah, I just refer about that. Definitely. Yes, thank you. So this was just one example of how life was different for us. Okay, now,
So what happens? World War II begins.
wait, before that, I need to say the following. The Kingdom of Romania, Romania had a king. His name was King Carol II. He basically maintained a neutrality. He did not get into the war right away because the war began September the 1st, 39 in Poland. However, there was this fascist political forces, especially the Iron Guard Party. And the members of the Iron Guard Party are the ones who took upon themselves to kill us in Transnistria and any other pogroms. So the popularity of this party rose and power, urging an alliance with Nazi Germany and its allies. So this was pre. Now, on October the 8th, 1940, 500,000 German troops invaded Romania from Austria. The Germans quickly seized Ploiești, which was the city that supplied oil to Germany, and took over Bucharest without any real losses. Only a handful of German and Romanian soldiers were killed in the brief war. Now, Romania, under pro-Nazi dictator Ion Antonescu, he was the head of this Iron Guard party, joined the Axis, Germany, Japan, Italy alliance in November 1940 and collaborated in the persecution and murdering of the Jews. He is the one who did the pogrom in January 21st, 1941 in Bucharest, the pogroms in Iași in June and July, and so on. Okay.
But when were the Jews of Romania actually rounded up?
That's an excellent question, Phyllis. They were not exactly. If I take the example of North Transylvania, that happened in May and June 1944, very late, they were put in semi-ghettos, and then after 2-3 days, they were taken on the trains. The most they stayed there a week, and then they went on the trains directly to Auschwitz. Now, the ones in Bukovina, They also, they simply were asked to come to the center of the city with their bags. And from there, they either walked. I'm going to say a few things about that, some testimonies. They either walked or they were put on trains, or they were, of course, cattle trains, or on wagons with horses, or they were just told, walk, you know? So there wasn't like it was in Poland, creating more of a ghetto and that kind of a situation. Actually, what happened is that at Transnistria, first of all, Transnistria is a territory that the Germans gave Ion Antonescu as a present because he and his army helped the Germans to fight against the Soviet Union Red Army.
No, wait, wait.
So
Who owned the, when Hitler gave this, whose land was it at that moment?
that moment, it belonged to the Soviet Union. And on that land, you see that whole huge piece of land that was somewhere between 200 miles or 345 square meters. It was a huge thing. Um, Various ethnic groups and soldier bases were on this piece of land because it's very much on the border with Romania. Now, why is it called Transnistria? Trans, over, the Nister and the Buk, which are two rivers. So that's what divided the former Soviet Union, today Ukraine, to Romania.
Okay.
See?
So far, I got it.
Okay. All right. Okay, so they got this piece of land, as I said, and deportation started in the fall, October, which was
Wait, wait.
between
October of.
1941, which was between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Okay. Some of the survivors have told me that Rosh Hashanah they observed in their own homes, but Yom Kippur they were either in the fields or they arrived already in Transnistria. So when they arrived there, that area where other people lived before, as I said, either bases of soldiers or various ethnic groups, there were no really houses and places where to live. They were just said, they were told, just go in and look for something. So in that area, the season of winter, because it's very much north, starts early. So a lot of people died after a few days because of weather situations. There were no beds or mattresses or water or electricity, no health conditions. Epidemic started. There was no food. Whoever had money would go, and lots of children became actually the messengers, took some money from the parents and went into the nearby villages and got some food. So the conditions of living, if you can put that in brackets, were just atrocious. Now, okay, I mentioned that. Now, I want to say something about the Jewish community of Bukovina. The Jewish community of Bukovina was not real Romanians. It was under the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and the emperor moved people from Vienna back in the 1850s, let's say, and brought them to this area in order to develop it economically. As usual, our reputation is that we are great merchants and connections, and the economy is going to flourish. And so it was. You see, the language in Bukovina was first German, then Romanian. Nobody spoke their Yiddish.
Interesting.
Yes, so the people, if your son or daughter would be very highly academic, the family will send the child, well, not the child, as a student to Vienna or to Budapest to study, and then they'll come back as doctors, as whatever profession. So it was a very special community that never went through such a disaster. And that's another reason that I've learned by speaking to survivors, that survivors who came from middle class or lower class, it was easier to survive than if you came from the top of the line class, where you had everything and you were, it took you by a trauma, by a shock. You didn't know how to handle situations like this, high society. So I wanted to mention that because that community was like this. They were very learned Jews. If we go today in those communities and we see their synagogues, amazing. The artwork, the architecture, it's just unbelievable. So that is an indication that it was a very special community. Now, something geographically. By the way, the lady's name that screamed on the phone, may she rest in peace, her name was Felicia Steigman Carmeli. Steigman is the name from from her family. She was born in Vatradorne. I'm mentioning these things just in case somebody listens and maybe knew of her. She told me that her grandfather had to walk. And I said that the winter starts early, and there is something very special with the ground there. When it comes in touch with water, the ground becomes very slippery and gluey. And if you don't walk fast enough, your shoes or boots can get stuck to the ground. And unfortunately, that's what happened to her grandfather, and she never saw him again. And the police or the soldiers kept pushing the people, walk fast, fast, of course, telling them in German, walk fast, fast. So that's how some people finish their lives too, already before, much earlier than arriving to Transnistria itself. Now, as in most cases, when Jews live under these kinds of circumstances, we know from other ghettos that the Nazis requested that we create a leadership, the Judenreich. So here, they were sort of semi-requested by the soldiers, by the governor who was assigned. And as I said, Transnistria was a territory, but if you speak to a survivor, they'll tell you, oh, I come from Mogilev. I come from Shergarod. I come from Berche. There were about 10 of these ghettos on this huge territory piece of land. And there was a Jewish leadership overall, and then in each location. Now, I am not here to criticize or to judge, but this community, as I said, came from a very special group of people. But most of the people who arrived in Transnistria were orphans, single mothers, because their husbands were taken a year before to slave labor camp, or young women that were never married, very few elderly people, and lots of children, lots and lots of children. Now, this, of course, created a big, big challenge for the leadership, especially all the orphaned kids. But these orphans, again, it is known in psychology also that children become much more mature under these kinds of circumstances. And I have a story that I will tell you later. And so a lot of things that today we analyze based on evidence that's in the archives in Bucharest, things that were not correctly done, not towards the women, not towards the kids, and so on. I'm just going to say that at this point. And now,
I just want to warn you that we have about 15 minutes left. So
15. Okay. So I do want to say that the Romanian authorities deported also 25,000 Roma people. I think that's important.
very
But
important.
yes, but most of them, unfortunately, about half of them died in the winter of 1943. That was the coldest winter. And they just were simply freezing because they didn't have their proper accommodation, you know. Now, in 1943, as things, the Germans saw that they are not going to do any big victories, they are not going to win. They were so close to the Red Army that they realized that they're not going to make it. So Ion Antonescu, this Romanian leader, realized that, maybe I should go back and do something else. So he stopped killing. He stopped deporting, because continuously he would deport people to Transnistria. Yes?
No, no, I wanted to clarify.
Oh,
We're only talking at this point Transnistria and not Auschwitz.
yeah, of course. Yeah. And so you see, in Bucharest, they knew Bucharest was not deported, nothing. In Bucharest was only, as I said, the pogrom on the 21st of January for 2 days, and some hard work for young people, forced labor. But locally, they still slept in their own houses at night. Um, so the leadership in Bucharest requested from Ion Antonescu, send us the children.
Mm-hmm.
And he, of course, at the beginning didn't want and such things, but gradually, as of December 43, he started to send the children. And the children were received in Bucharest. Some were adopted by Jewish families. There were also orphanages, and there were two women that were overseeing these orphanages and took good care of them. Many of them left for Israel as soon as the war was over. And, that's how they saved themselves. And, okay, in the spring of 1944, the Red Army took over the area. The Romanians gradually just left. And over 3 years was a terrible, horrible suffering for so many Jews. And now I have a few stories, brief ones. Number one, Tarbut, our foundation, one of our missions is to translate books from Hebrew and English to the Romanian language. And we do that, anyways, that is my line, because there were Jews who survived and wrote memoirs and novels and everything. But the problem was that until December 89, they were censored. So what we call today distortion of the story. So that's why we are doing it for the past 10 years. So I want to show you a book. It's called The Lists of Mothers. It is written by Gali Mir Tibon. And she is famous, also related to the 7th of October, because her son was in one of the villages next to Gaza. And she and her husband, captain in the army, went to save the family, in case you heard the name Tibon.
Yeah, I've heard the story. I don't remember the name, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that's him with her. So in this book, it's coming out on October the 9th, 2025 in Romanian. Now, what she did, she took, remember I said that there were lots of children and women. She spent a few months in Romania and she read a lot of the reports. And I'm just going to say the following. Many mothers sold their bodies for a slice of bread for their children. So you can imagine the type of life that our mothers, grandmothers had to go through in this camp, in this territory of camps. Now I'm going to tell you now a nicer story. Felicia is 9 years old. She was born in 1939. And she came with her parents. Her parents had a store, very well to do. She spoke German. She was playing the piano, you know. And one day her father comes and brings her a little doll and a carriage for a doll. And she was so happy because she didn't get a chance to bring her doll to Transnistria. And he says, as of tomorrow morning, you and the two neighbor boys that were 13, 14-year-olds are going to walk from our house all the way till the end of the camp. There you're going to meet a lady. She's going to give you lots of cookies and candies, and then you come back. She did this for about 2 years without knowing what's inside the little dolly carriage. After liberation, they came home. Parents were very depressed, sick. But one day, the father took her, she was already 14, and says to her, my dear, I want you to know what you did. You saved us. When she went to the end of the camp, she gave away the carriage because she was busy with her candies and cakes and everything that the lady there gave them. Ammunition and food and planning for revolting the partisans. There was a bunch of partisans there, was put in the carriage. So I think that we see here the hope and the faith and never give up, which is so much into our lives these days, not just with Pesach, but also with what has happened to us on October the 7th. So if you have any questions, do I still have some time?
You have enough time to tell us how your mother was liberated from Bergen-Belsen. I don't mean how, I mean her story.
Okay, I'll tell you the following. So all the Jews of Maramuresh, North Transylvania, were deported to Auschwitz. She was always with her sister, who was younger than her by 3 years. She always held her, and it was emotional support as well as security. And they were chosen to be among the 50,000 people, mainly men and women, to start the walk on the march, on the death marches. Out of the 50,000, only 5,000 survived. She and her sister were among them. They arrived in Bergen-Belsen in January 1945. Auschwitz was already liberated because they were taken in the middle of December. They arrived in Bergen-Belsen. Agi, her sister, got very sick with tuberculosis. She almost passed out completely. And my mother was watching her and taking care of her. When they arrived in Bergen-Belsen, the Nazis knew that they are losing or they lost, and they didn't do anything with them. They didn't work, hardly any food. That's why on the 15th of April, which was a Saturday morning, when the British soldiers and some Canadians, I'm very proud as a Canadian, walked in Bergen-Belsen and liberated it, found a lot of dead bodies and also a horrible smell, because the bodies were left. They were not buried anymore in neither mass or single. The doctors looked at the people and basically they did a different selection. If they saw that there is hope that people will recuperate, they put them on a special mission project that the Red Cross did with Sweden. It was called the White Buses and the White Boats. And what happened was my mom, her sister, and many, many more men and women were taken on these buses to the seashore, the northern seashore, put on boats, crossing the water into Sweden. Once they arrived in Sweden, the monasteries, either monks or nuns, took over these people. My mom and her sisters stayed in a monastery for 3.5 years. Now, the rehabilitation was physical, emotional, and now I'm going to say what I think it was brilliant. They were teaching them or developing better their profession. The Swedish people felt that when they will leave, they at least should have something in their hands, a profession. So my mother was already a dressmaker. She was born in 1926. So she progressed in her profession of dressmaker. And her sister also progressed, and when both of them made Aliyah to Israel in 1948, my aunt at the kibbutz, once upon a time when you lived on a kibbutz, everybody wore the same clothes, the same colors. She was in charge of, you can say, the textile factory, thanks to Sweden.
That
And my mom, would work as a high, professional. She would be hired, once upon a time, especially in Israel in the 50s, 60s. People who had money would invite a dressmaker for a couple of days, and she will sew five, six dresses, pants, whatever the family wanted. And so my mother did those types of things. So that's how my mother and her sister survived.
I think it's such a poignant experience that you describe the story on the day that they were liberated because it's and they were, lucky at every step of the way. They were lucky. I mean, I've read horrifying stories of doctors trying to do the right thing right after liberation who gave starving Jews the wrong thing and killed them. I mean, so
Right.
uh, it's just lucky that you're with us today because they got the right treatment.
Yes, they did. And I think they survived, so I should be here too. I say that sometimes.
Well, I think I would agree. I would agree.
Because you know my mission.
It,
And in 2 weeks, I'm going to be in Bergen-Belsen. That's going to be my fourth time. But the reason why I decided to go is because of the special ceremonies. And after that, I'm going to Sweden. So, in a way, I'm closing my circle in memory of my mother.
well, with those compelling words, I'm going to say, may the memory of the victims and those who tried to save them be a blessing forever.